I think we break 100 again. I don't know that that's controversial. More importantly, I think we might break 100 term this year. Maybe that's controversial. There is a certain amount of pounds that have to be contracted between now and the end of the year. I think that there's enough to get us above 100 because there's just simply not enough people that can actually sign that contract and deliver in 3 or 4 years' time.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Next Big Rush. I am here with my friend Steve. I should call him just my friend Steve. Steve, what's
I like
your
that.
cool uranium name, man? You gotta come up with something.
I should. I'm not very good at that, but
Okay, so let me just coin something that you're probably not gonna like. Steve is gossip central for uranium. Okay, you guys don't know this, but he knows everything that's going on at all levels of the game, and he's very humble about it. So I'm just gonna, say it like it is. Steve, welcome. Let's chat uranium.
sounds good. Sounds good. First of all, congratulations on your beautiful baby. And yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
congratulations. Yeah, she's gorgeous.
I'm
And
biased, but I agree.
yeah, congratulations on Rush and Myriad doing so well. That's exciting to see. I think they're probably onto something at Copper Mountain.
Yeah, which is something that we might be able to talk about depending on obviously the
I don't know
topic.
that much, I'm happy for them.
There's a lot I can't talk about regarding that, but we'll see. We'll see where this conversation takes us. So, Steve, let me just open up with the big question that is on a lot of people's minds. I have seen lately on Twitter and elsewhere that a lot of the people who have kind of jumped on the bandwagon and invested, in the last, call it a couple of years, are in the red and they are really feeling it. A lot of them are throwing in the towel, understandably. They have their own goals and ambitions. And I see that the fundamental story for uranium is getting better and better. And it has, on paper, kind of surpassed even the most bullish prediction of what could happen to nuclear in the next decade or two.
Yeah.
But it seems like the equities aren't really following up with that. What's up with that? What's your opinion on what's going on? How do you see that, and how are you playing it?
Um, I'm trying to sit tight and just hold what I have and be patient. That's how I'm playing it. Um, it is miserable. I don't, I wouldn't blow smoke at somebody, say it's been fun. David Morgan, the silver guru, always said that like at any bull market and anything, its job is to shake you out or wear you out. And man, that is so true. For all commodities, silver and uranium being kind of volatile, Bitcoin, any of those, like, the bull markets are pretty wild, right? And lately the uranium one has just been lulled to sleep. And I think, yeah, I keep asking myself when moon, like everybody else. But I was thinking the other day that that's really kind of why the trade presents an opportunity to people like us that do our homework and think about it and think, man, they've got to buy this eventually, like the math is the math. Supply and demand are been disjointed. But because that trade is available to us is also why it's taking so long. Like it's the same reason, like there's a huge disconnect in the supply chain between a sovereign power or a nuclear utility that needs uranium or a military that needs uranium, and then going on down all the steps between, the fuel fabricators, the plant builders, the enrichers, the converters, the miners, the explorers. Like there's a lot of steps, and each one of those steps takes a long time. And that gives us an opportunity, but also it makes it, I think, impossible to time. And man, the disconnect, like we have seen, I think the long-term price is 25 months of nothing but positive gains every single month. And I know also that both the medium term and the longer term are a lot higher than reported. They're saying, oh, $81. Well, the most recent contract I know signed like 3 months ago was like an $85 floor, but it was base escalated. So by the time of delivery, it's going to be 93, and then I think the ceiling was 135. But base escalated of spots above that and terms above that, which I think it will be, it's gonna be higher. So yeah. it's nasty medicine to take, but yeah, you should be patient. And don't expect, I don't think you can expect it to have, the short-term predictability in any way. Like if you want a momentum trade, and go momentum trade, but I think this is just an entirely different type of play. And it's frustrating to see the equities cheaper now than mostly, I don't know, several of them are cheaper now than the last time we talked a year ago.
Yeah.
And especially compared to spot and term, because I think term at the time was like 53, and I think spot was like 56. And we're like, yeah, I think we have a good year. And we pretty much doubled just 4 or 5 months after we talked. It, went from the 50s to 106. I think that last $10 of that spot spike was mostly just trading. It wasn't utility buyers, and I think they got kind of unnerved by that. And they thought they were buying a spike, and they thought they were being squeezed, and they didn't like being, nobody likes to be price gouged, right? You see, yeah, you see gas go up, and they go, it's a spike. I'll wait a week, That's just a hurricane, freaking people out, and everybody's buying toilet paper and gas, and it's just a spike. And so I think it's natural to want to pull back from a spike, but I think that's going to run really counterproductive for them. I think they're going to have to pay a lot more, maybe by the end of this year. We've only contracted in term, less than 60 million pounds. We're only at, about a third of probably what they should have the last 3 years. Probably only about a quarter of, replacement rate. It's really low. And so I think once that price discovery happens, and we just hit the October 1st fiscal year rollover on their budgets. And so I know that the off-market discussions are happening. Like you and I talked to the mining CEOs, and they're kind of in, I don't know a better word for it or phrase for it, a Mexican standoff. Like they're just, who's going to blink first and who's going to say okay. And it's not the miners. They finally realize where they're at with the ability to set their own prices.
They know what they have, and they know how much it
The unique
costs.
commodity. You can't, like our friend Mark Wolbert says, like, you can't stick your balance sheet into your reactor core. I guess you could, but the paper's just going to burn up, right? Like it's not going to do anything. You're not going to get power.
Will not work.
Will not work. And I think the trade hasn't worked as it should have for me or anybody else. They're the way that we wanted. Gosh, for the last 15 years. I mean, like it's done really well for some of them, but it's not, it hadn't been predictable or normal, I guess. And I think a lot of that is we've been orphaned as an investment, right? Like
Tell me more.
there's not been good investment money come in. There's not been a bank analyst covering it. Most of those bank analysts left 2011, 2012, like after Fukushima, they just said, okay, we're out. And really, there's not been any sort of big investment outside of like speculators and a couple of hedge funds that saw the squeeze happening really since the 90s. I mean, it's been a long time since proper new money has come into the trade. But now that the sovereigns have picked us up, and now that big tech has picked us up, I think big tech, they need what they need. They don't want to fall behind. They lose their competitive advantage if they can't get power. They know most national grids, including the US, is not as stable and as capable of growing as they would like. And so like you see Microsoft sign with 3 Mile Island, Unit 1.
That was massive.
They're going to take all 100, megawatt hours, and they want to be behind the meter. Like they want a direct line. They do not want it off the grid. They want it directly to them. They want all of it. They're going to pay like a pretty high premium over market price. They want to turn it 20-year contract. But I think that 20-year contract is going to give pricing stability to the utilities. And I think that stability and that extra profit margin that now the utilities are, I mean, they're double dipping. They're in windfall profits now between getting extra premium for being baseload, extra premium for being zero carbon, and extra premium for the Inflation Reduction Act for being renewable. They're swimming in profit. So I think that is going to trickle down. And we're seeing that in the higher ends of the fuel cycle, like enrichment,
Mhm.
I don't know how many dozen all-time highs we're at, be like, we are way high. Conversion, all those we're seeing, brand new highs that a couple years ago didn't seem possible. They were still wanting to shut down those plants, not add more, build more. But now that they are getting their incentive prices to build more enrichment and conversion capacity, it's going to come to us. I don't know when. I think we see a strong move between now and March pretty much constantly, kind of like we did last year.
Mhm.
And I hate to say seasonality, but the utilities now don't have any choice. And they've been trying to buy time by pulling every lever they can with buying EUP from China, taking a loan from Japan or Korea. Like they're doing everything they can, flexing up contracts with Cameco and Kazatomprom. And that's forced those miners to destock their inventories.
Mhm.
But now that those are pretty much at emergency levels, and both of those probably should, don't have to, but should buy at spot to keep a reasonable level of inventory. Arano too, they're at record low inventory, we think. It's not been published recently, but
Mhm.
that's just the math. Like there's only so many miners. We know all of them. We know most of them have
You can
problems.
put them all in one small room. You can put them all in my living room. That's
You
why we
can't,
know.
like, it's ridiculous. Like you go, like you run down the miners, you're like, oh well, Honeymoon's boss problems, URG problems, Cameco
Global
barely made
Atomic,
protection, Global Atomic, like, they're
many
delayed.
problems. Yeah.
Um, but the other mines in Niger aren't able to produce what they or aren't able to even export what they have
No.
produced, and the junta is holding that uranium hostage, and that's why they're keeping the border closed still, because they want kind of, I don't know about reparations. They want some sort of apology from France, and I don't think they're going to get it. But at some point, they're going to have to open that border. Anyway,
Okay, so
the Americans, like, you can't name a miner or a restart that hasn't been delayed, hasn't had a production shortfall.
true. And even the ones, especially the ones in the US, as much as a theme within the uranium story,
Yeah.
small they are compared to the worldwide market, right? And so we talk about Anchor Energy producing, great. Does it make a dent in the supply thesis? Absolutely not,
No,
right?
and then because Adaprom's shortfall alone was several million pounds, and all the rest of those restarts alone don't add up to that.
Mhm.
And I was just talking about this with I can't say. I was just talking about somebody
Mr. X.
Mr. X, yeah. And they're like, well, 19 of the CEOs have resigned just in the last, I don't know, 3.5 years, maybe 4 years, and two of them are in jail. And I think those
Wow.
two are the most honest, the most productive, the most helpful CCO and CEO that they had, like the best.
Mhm.
That's going to have a real chilling effect. Like we talked, I think it was last year about this, that like they were making a lot of their employees take polygraph tests.
Really
Like
got that bad.
that's just
Wow.
not normal. That's not healthy. Like you're not going to meet production goals if that's part
Absolutely
of
not.
your work
Absolutely
environment.
not. No,
Like it's just not going to work.
no.
Um, yeah.
My gosh. Okay,
Not,
so
not to talk about, like the sulfuric acid shortage that they have, and all the sulfuric acid going to agriculture.
and it's not going to get fixed. I mean, let's face
Yeah,
it. If
not
if
soon.
you're a company that's essentially a mixture between a public company and a national company, you are going to have to bow down to the national interests, period, end of story. Even if they weren't, if they were a completely quote unquote public company, they would still have to bow down to national interests. And the truth is that the leadership in the country has decided, for good reasons, that they are going to, divert their efforts towards agriculture because they need to get reelected. They need to eat. They need basic
Yeah,
necessities. And so if you have that bottleneck, and that is what's holding the most prolific supplier of uranium to the world, you're looking at China and Russia getting more and more involved with Kazatomprom, by the day, by the minute. Do you think there's any possibility that Kazatomprom could be nationalized or something could happen towards that? What's your thought?
I think it has. I think that's why we've seen. I think it has quietly. We joke about like American millennials and how they quiet quit. I think Kazatomprom, and it's not wildly, said it out loud enough, but I'll say it out loud. Like Kazatomprom, I think it already has effectively been nationalized. It's just been quietly. Like, but has it been that quiet? I mean, no. Like all these C-suite guys are gone.
It's
uh,
true.
and then like what are they doing with? They didn't warn any other JV partners like Chemical or Rano or the Koreans that, hey, we're going to add a mineral extraction tax. Here it is. Like the market found out same time those guys. I mean, that's not respectful, or that's not how a publicly traded company would act. And then, I can't, more and more of their pounds are just going to continue to go to Russia and China, right? But a lot of that is Western Utilities' own fault. And I think that should be said out loud too. Like, I don't blame Kazatomprom for shipping there. Like, we're the ones that put on sanctions to the port of St. Petersburg and said, okay, well, now the shipping costs. Yeah. So if you take it this way, if you normally St. Petersburg, less than $2, um, closer to one. Now you're going to have to pay, I think it was $18 or $19 to ship it Trans-Caspian route. And no insurance company is going to back that crazy route because it's super unsafe, super risky. And so you're going to have to eat your own loss if, something happens and it's not insured. And like the utilities and Cameco and all, Rana just expected them to eat that cost. And so like they were expecting profit and they didn't get profit. That's not fair. And it wasn't their rule, it wasn't their fault. And so, like the West is treating their partners badly. I think we're for unbiased and fair about it. And so I don't blame Kazatomprom for saying, you know what, we're not going to sell you anything else. We're just going to get over there because they're going to give us a fair market price for it. And they're not going
And
to
there's a quick turnover, right? They can deliver the goods
much
much
faster.
more quickly. And so
Yeah.
there's no point in not getting a premium if you're going through the trouble of, servicing your partners or clients in the West. So with this whole Kazatomprom situation and the way that supply is, you briefly mentioned, like the AI data centers.
Yep.
Refresh my memory here because I know I report on this for a living, but I got mommy brain and I can barely keep track because honestly, this last couple of weeks it's been like, are we reporting this again? Is this a repeat? Like, has this
Yeah.
not happened in the last 48 hours? And it's a different company. So like, who are the companies that have come out in the last week or two
Oh, yeah.
talking about AI data centers? Because I saw news about, I think, was it Microsoft and Google and OpenAI? And I think they're, like three different things, but
Uh,
help me out here, Steve, because it seems like it's difficult to name the ones that haven't come out, right? The big tech companies that haven't come out in the US and said, we're going to need nuclear in order to be effective and to be a big player in AI. By the way, all of those companies have very, very intense, very high budget programs in AI right now. So this is not something that they're trying to think up of, oh, in the future this will be necessary. It's like we need to make plans and sign contracts right now.
yeah. And they are signing contracts right now. Gosh. Okay. So there's Oklo and OpenAI, there's Microsoft, there's Amazon Data Services, Amazon proper, Oracle. Forgetting two. There were seven.
And I think there's Google as well. Did you mention
Yeah,
Google?
Google. Meta
Of
was the other.
course.
Um,
Basically
yeah,
all of them.
basically all of them.
Basically all
Like,
of
oh,
them.
what's the Mag 7? All of them.
All of them. Yeah,
Yeah,
all of
even
them.
the chip makers were talking about it because they want the industrial heat of SMRs. and the the steel makers, and like some of the supportive industries, not just the data companies, they need it, but like even to make the stuff, the silicon and the chips and stuff they were talking about, like on down the supply chain. And you're right, they have the cash. These aren't people like, for years the utilities would just kind of, well, they work on pennies, and so they're going to nickel and dime you. um and yeah, I think that's why we're not orphaned anymore. And the money hasn't hit our account yet, but I think in the next year or so it does. Simply because like they have the cash, they have the plan, they have the demand that is now. They're wanting to lock up power for as soon as 2026, and they know that if they don't fall behind, they lose trillions of dollars by losing their competitive edge. Um, and I think something else that hasn't been said out loud enough is that not only do they have the cash, they also own the politicians, right? I mean, like, they are major donors to both political parties,
Yes.
and whether it be a congressman, a senator, or even a president, like they own both presidents. Like,
They get what they want.
yeah, yeah. Tesla too, SpaceX, whatever, Musk, Twitter, all of them, like they have the ear and the pocketbook of all these politicians and the purse strings, and they're going to say, hey, we need this, and the NRC is in our way. You need to deregulate them, or you need to get us a waiver, or you need to speed this up and expedite it. And we heard about that. And that just this last week, I was telling you that like the NRC and some big tech lobbyists were meeting, and they were saying, we need to streamline this process. And if we need to help you design the AI software that expedites your permitting, we will help you do it. Like, we will help you do your job in order to get us what we want. And so now that we
They're
have,
serious when they say something like that, right? It's like, okay, we need something and we will do it for you. You just have to sign here.
yeah, rubber stamp this for us, like we've not had that since the 70s in the US. But we're seeing it in every country now, like France talking about, adding reactors going fleet mode. The US energy liftoff report just came out this last week. They have a plan, and it's more than tripling. It's almost quadrupling how much power we're going to do by 2050 in order to meet air conditioners, electric cars, and AI and data centers. And they feel like they have to do it, and they feel like, I think gold and silver bugs will talk about the debt to GDP and how it's not sustainable and how we're going to have to print. And that is true, but the other half of that is GDP. And can we grow it? We can, but there's no such thing as an energy poor productive nation or prosperous nation, right? Like, prosperity and energy production, there's an unbreakable correlation.
Yeah, they go hand in hand, absolutely.
If we're going to have to get our GDP up in order to get to our debt, like, really the way to do that, to save your country, is by growing your energy. And really the only way to grow energy is through nuclear. And you can trace that back. Like, the British were the global hegemon and global currency because of the coal pound. And then, we were with the petrodollar. And now I think whoever adapts and takes on nuclear power the best, and I don't know if that's be America, China, or a mix, they're going to share whatever the global currency powers is. And so if we want to stay a global power, or if you want to be a global power, if you just want production enough to not drown in your own debt, like, you're going to have to make serious power gains in nuclear. And so I think that's why we're all going fleet mode. So
Now,
yeah.
do you think, Steve, that with that, there could be, or there is already a bottleneck, downstream, say with UF6, or, whatever stage we're talking about here, that has prevented, the price from rising faster and staying up? Or do you think that
Yeah.
even if we do have a bottleneck, which I believe that we do, like this is what it looks like, you see prices going up, and capacity obviously not meeting demand because it's not something that you can flip on a switch quickly.
Right.
Do you think that can hold us back further, or do you think that even if that's a reality, utilities are just going to have to budge and say, okay, we're going to buy the uranium anyway because
That
of
has delayed
whatever
us.
reason?
It's delayed us already several quarters, probably close to 2.5 years now. I think that's one of the big reasons we've had a delay for the last couple of years is the bottlenecks in conversion. Um, the enrichment side's not as bad, but on both, ultimately what that does is just it delays the price response in yellow cake, but then it also makes the spike higher. Like the chartists, the TA guys will say, "Oh, the longer the base, the higher in space," right? And it's like that with all supply chains. Like the longer you wait to address a problem, the bigger the problem is going to be, and the more expensive it's going to be. And so I think that sends us to a much higher price in uranium.
How high
And
do
so
we go, Steve?
I don't know that there is an upper limit because, like, I mean, at what prices, are these AI data center people, like the big tech, there's not a price that's too high for them because energy is so dense, nuclear energy is so power dense that there's not a there's not a price that's too high for them. Um, at some
So
point,
are you telling me that these guys are going to come into the market and be all sloppy and just buy because they need it?
yeah, and kind of like the big oil companies, because they saw that uranium was important to America, France, and Russia. The oil companies wanted some of that money in the 70s, and so they would got into the uranium trade, right? Like a lot of the exploration permits that and exploration data we still have um, is from that time because of big oil. And I think we see that again where big tech comes down and maybe they buy Denison, maybe they buy NextGen, maybe they buy Encore just to get the uranium. It's they buy tin mines or JV partners. They'll buy silver mines as part of a JV partner. Like at some point they're going to integrate the supply chain to get security if that's what they need to do. And I think they end up will because they need it. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if big tech got in before anybody else on some of this.
Okay, so if we're
Not
playing
this
this
year, but
game, yeah, of
soon.
course, yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's never this year. No, 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 no. I mean, last year was pretty wild. The end of last year
The
was.
end of last year, yeah.
I could barely concentrate on like Christmas, New Year's, the festivities because I was like, wow, something's happening here in Uranian, and I'm sorry, but I gotta check this a second time, a third time, a fourth time. But when we're talking about, okay, this paints a picture of the story's getting better. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But how do you actually capitalize on that? Do you still think that people should go through the trouble of looking into different options for equities and having an opinion on different jurisdictions? Should they just buy an ETF or maybe buy the uranium itself? I mean, I do believe the price of uranium going up is probably the most obvious, most certain trade in the next X amount of years. I have prolonged the X. I thought it was going to be like 3 to 5. Now I'm thinking 5 to 10. In the last couple of weeks, I probably made that like 12 to 15. Unless
Yeah.
there's a crazy
The
technology.
market really can't balance till 2033. Um,
Yeah, that's a long time. That's a long time.
huge.
So like, how do we go from here? How do we capitalize on that?
I think for your time and effort, I think probably just buying the ETF is easiest. Um, and I think maybe, you know, I think there is alpha though. There's a lot of gains to be had if you could get into the details and say, man, I don't want exposure to this jurisdiction or that jurisdiction. Like I don't want to be in Utah. I want to be in Texas, Wyoming.
Okay, so tell me more. Tell me more. You're
Um,
you're getting to where I want to go anyway.
well, the United States, I don't. every state is a different kind of experiment in the constitutional republic. Um, and so I think you have a lot of different laws, especially around mining in each one. And then you also have different communities and different cultures in each one. And my personal feelings about them aside, like Texas and Wyoming, they will let you make a living. You know, like they'll let you get to work. They are much less hands-on governments. And so if you want to put a uranium mine, you know, especially they'll let you do it. You want to go look, they'll let you do it. You know, I mean, you can't be an idiot and do it illegally and not follow law. You know, and standard safety practices, but you can get to work. Um, Nebraska and Colorado are pretty reasonable, but then you get into Utah, and it's not so much the state laws, but like the local tribes, like the Navajo and the Ute for people. They have a long memory, and like they were treated really terrible in the 40s and 50s and 60s, mostly by the US military, also by some of the miners that did not practice good radiation safety, did not practice like environmental safety and poison the water. And like even still, that those people have a really high incidence of cancer and autoimmune disorders. And like they protested at the Utah Capitol yesterday. Um, and it's just like, well, why? Well, mostly because they've suffered. I don't know that, you know, like Energy Fuels is there with the White Mesa Mill, and I I've not seen any reports that they're doing anything wrong. Like by all reports, they are exceeding. It's one of the safest places in the world. Like they're doing everything they should. But the chemical process that they use to refine uh, waste tails and waste conversion stuff for Cameco, so they recycle the waste of Cameco at that plant because they're not mining really. They're just recycling waste in order to make money. The plant smells. Like you drive by it, you know it, you know. Um, and so I think the people now they're sick because of what happened decades ago, and suffering still because what happened decades ago. But it's easier to say, man, they're still doing this. They're still treating uranium, and it's smelly, and so I don't want that in my backyard, you know. And so I think because of that legacy, you know, uh, I don't want to own Energy Fuels.
You know, I had to sell my position out of several years. I don't even know how old the position was. It was just like
Yeah,
it was old and dusty and left in a corner somewhere. And I'm like, oh, I still own this. It's just the kind of company that is doing things right, but it's a stock that doesn't go anywhere. And that
yep,
was really my frustration.
yep,
And now this is, I guess, my spiel in the industry because I don't have the technical knowledge and I don't have the patience to learn the technicals of, mining and geology. And so I come to the game understanding that, okay, I want to understand which stock is going to go up. And if the stock doesn't go up, then whether it's a good company or not, it kind of doesn't matter. It's not going to make me profits. It's not going to feed my family. So I'm not
yeah,
interested. And Energy
yeah,
Fuels was, one of those that I did make money from it because I got in, so low. But at the same time, it was just going sideways and down while the story was getting better. They're getting into rare earths, and
yeah,
these are decent human beings. I've met with them,
yep,
and they didn't really want to be a uranium company anymore, and that's the feel I got from them.
yeah,
They didn't say it in these words exactly, but they were pretty clear about their intentions. And I should have sold then, right? I could have like recycled that money into something else. But yeah, within that US, you mentioned Myriad Uranium. Tell me what you think about this company. This is interesting for me. By the way, massive disclaimer: I am a board member and shareholder of Rush Rare Metals. Rush is the company that originally held Copper Mountain and the surrounding projects. And we painfully, probably the wrong time, but with the information that we had at the time, did do a deal with Myriad. I think they got the better end of the deal because as the ink was drying on it, then uranium started to lift off. This was last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And now they hold, the Copper Mountain project. And they've been, getting some attention lately. There's been some movement there, especially because they're drilling right now as we speak. I do not have any insider information about what's going on. In fact, we as a company, we are staying away from the area, and we're trying to avoid talking
Sure.
to anybody in the company because we don't want to have that information right now. We want to act freely, but at the same time, they're drilling. It's exciting. It's in and around former mines, and I think there's something to it. But well, like, why do you think the Myriad story is interesting?
Again, I don't have any insider information. I am a shareholder because I think American Uranium is going to carry the largest premium of all the jurisdictions. And I think of those, I think Wyoming is going to be really high, even among the United States. Um, the deposit, we don't know enough, right? Like we have historical drilling. I don't know if they wrote it in code or if they were just keeping kind of company notes instead of like a proper, they weren't trying to follow it. Didn't like I've looked at some of the data. It doesn't look like they were trying to follow like modern standards. This is our grid, this is our plan, da da da. I think they were just trying to get as many pounds as possible to feed their own supply chain when they were Rocky Mountain Energy. And this is in the 70s, and I think Dustin Garrow was there, right? So yeah, I'd love for you to interview him and ask him a little bit more about it because he was on the ground at the time. But just from the data I've seen, like there's a lot of uranium there. Um, enough to be an economic deposit. Now it would have been open pit then. It could maybe be open pit now, maybe underground, maybe in C2 leached with the right lixiviant. But there's a lot of uranium there. They didn't go very deep because they were just kind of, it was early days exploration. And at the time that they said, well, we're probably not going to go very deep. But anyway, and then if the grade was higher than I think it was like a 1/4%, they just said, oh, that's high enough, 1/4%, and they just wrote it down. Like I think they were just doing crib notes. Like it doesn't look like they were trying to find out like precisely like we would do with a modern resource estimate, like a 43-101. And so I think there's a lot more there than historically is indicated. And so I think all the estimates they have are underestimates. And so I like our chances of what they find. And I was calling Tom to learn more about the company, Lamb, the director and CEO, and he didn't say anything with words, but sometimes what people communicate non-verbally by their tone of voice, like you could just hear that he was happy. Like more than just like, oh, today's a good day, lovely sunshine, like,
Mhm,
and he, his guys that he was talking to were excited.
mhm.
And so sometime, I think that's enough, like, because they were starting to send skint probes down the holes that they'd been drilling. And I don't think they'd gotten very far yet because it was the first day or two, but
Mhm.
um, yeah,
Cool.
sometimes the feeling's enough, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Fingers crossed for all of us, all of our
yeah,
sake,
yeah, yeah.
and all of our portfolio sakes. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting. The reason why I like it so much, and actually the reason why I agreed to come on board, quite literally, was because I found myself doing very well with companies that were more of development plays rather than pure exploration. So I love exploration. I love the fact that, I was promoting F3 when they were making discoveries. So it was like the easiest job in the world. I'm like, hey, look at this company. Look at look at the 59% uranium they just found.
Yeah, yeah,
It's quite ridiculous, right? It's such absurd grades in the Athabasca. Uh, and it's a completely different game when you know that there is 100% certainty there is uranium in the ground. The question mark is how much, where it is, and what grade it is. I am quite comfortable with, I don't know what they're going to find. It is in this, I guess, technically maiden drilling campaign. I don't know how many campaigns it's going to take for them to prove up the resources and say, look, we have like X million pounds of uranium of this grade, but we know that that's coming. We know that it's there. That makes me very comfortable to
Yep.
buy a stock and hold it for a long time. And
Yep. Yep.
so that patience that you need, it's difficult to have with, companies that are pre-discovery, because you know what, sometimes people get really excited. Oh, there's something here, there's something here, there's, and then geos get all excited about this, that, and the other, and this structure and whatever. And even geophysics can't give you all the answers. You drill and you don't hit, guess what? Market isn't going to care. Price is coming down, and it's going to stay down until you have something new and some other either promotion or some other drilling campaign on its way.
Yeah.
So I really like this for that. Obviously, Wyoming, as you said, probably the best jurisdiction in the U.S. along with Texas. If you go to Wyoming, this is hearsay to me because I've never been, but I have it on good word that if you go there, people are actively curious about when the uranium mines are going to come back online. I mean, this is completely unheard of in most other territories,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is awesome. And I don't know everybody on the board of Myriad, but I know where it came from, right? I know the Rush board very well, and these guys are like annoyingly honest and compliant to a fault. That gives me, the sense of, I guess, peace of
Yeah.
whatever is going to happen. It's either a hit or it's not, or it's going to take more money, more time, whatever, but there's something there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it's not just something that we're going to use to raise money and then use our spouses or foreign connections to sell stock on a spike as we promote, because unfortunately that happens a lot in the game.
Yeah.
And yeah, the people who are involved are not playing a game. They legitimately want to bring value to shareholders, and they really do care about their own reputations. And this is something people don't know about. They don't know that until they cross over to the dark side of being on the board of a company and seeing it day in and day out. And the kind of conversations that we have, of, okay, we're going to do this, but what does that do to the share price? And how is this going to serve the people who
Yep.
own the shares, who are the owners of the company? And I wish that mining companies were a little bit more respectful and mindful of that, of, hey, when we're buying a stock, we kind of own a piece of this thing, and maybe you should, consider your costs. For example, our CEO made like 5K a month for the longest time. That's all he did. And yeah, little things like that go a really long way. And I hope, if there's any fairness to this, that both teams are going to be nicely rewarded, and we'll see.
I think they will. Yeah. I think they will.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Right, Steve. I want a really like controversial thought that we could, play out on Twitter after we're done. How high do you think we go this year? Spot.
I think we break 100 again. I don't know that that's controversial. More importantly, I think we might break 100 term this year. Maybe that's controversial. Um, there is a certain amount of pounds that have to be contracted between now and the end of the year. That I think that there's enough to get us above 100, because there's just simply not enough people that can actually sign that contract and deliver in 3 or 4 years time. The gap between now and 2030, there's so few players that can actually build a mine. But man, I trying to think of something controversial for you. I don't know that a price prediction would be helpful or controversial. What I'm constantly surprised about, though, that maybe more controversial, is just like, I think if the utilities and the fuel buyers and the sovereign nations and stuff, because they care, right? Like, you see Macron traveling to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, the president of France, like he's not getting out of bed for nothing, and he's flying,
Most
you
people
know,
have no idea
across
what
the
the heck
country.
they would be doing that. We're like, oh, okay, yeah, we're
Like,
paying
what are they
attention.
doing there? Like they're
We
talking
know.
about, you know, like they're trying to secure power for their grid because they're worried, you know. But I think if they knew that what you and I know about so many of these mining CEOs that say that they're going to produce at this cost in this year, and like their mine's not permitted, their mine's not built, their mine's not staffed. They don't have the board or the people that will let them get in production. They, you know, like there's there's not the permits, there's not the mines. I mean, there are the pounds, but there's not the people that can get them out. Like there's just not enough people with the experience or the safety certifications to get this done. Like between now and 2030, especially. Like it's just so maybe that's controversial. I don't know, but
So in other words, if there's somebody who's young and smart here and wants to get into nuclear, it's probably a really good career choice,
it's a
right?
great time. Yeah, you got a good 15 years ahead of you.
There
Yeah,
we go. That might be enough for some
and it's
people.
advanced.
Because then when you have 15 years of experience and you've been successful, then it's all easier from there. Steve,
Yeah.
last question. What excites you the most about this trade?
I think that just what we just talked about, that there's really no supply that can come on in any significant or market balancing quantity for 7 years.
That's a long time. What does 7 years of constricted supply does to the price of anything?
I think it's going to be enjoyable for us.
I've never seen anything like this. Bear in mind, I'd like to think that I'm young enough that I haven't seen many things, but I've never seen
Yeah,
this much supply pressure and no massive, you know, solution to this.
yeah, yeah. It's crazy. I think we see something similar to what we saw in fracking here in the Western United States. Um, you know, the fracking boom that we had here, where it was just like, oh, we can cut diagonal wells and we can pressurize it and we can fracture this and gas and oil are going to come out. Oh, we need to get to work. And all of a sudden, boom, you know, and that was definitely a productivity miracle that um, I think it's, you know, got us out of the great financial crisis and gave us the last 10 years of prosperity that we've enjoyed, was mostly because of that. Um, and so I think that's what uranium sees probably for the next 15 years. But
Awesome.
for
Awesome.
sure,
And let's watch for, any sort of energy breakthroughs that we might be on the cusp of. Who knows? Maybe somebody figures out how to yeah, I don't even know. I'm not even gonna say it because it sounds ridiculous. So let's just leave it at that. Steve, thank you so much for coming on. We should do this more often for sure.
appreciate it.
Yeah, any last words for fellow uranium investors or people who would like to get into the game?
Expect volatility. If you're not going to put a lot of work into it, just buy the ETF and go work on your physical fitness or something.
That
Forget
always
about
pays dividends.
that for sure trade.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve, and see you next time.
Yeah.